Morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is if it's coming up to heal. And this is a premise that I operate from in my work with myself, with my clients, that whatever the upset, it's an opportunity. And we can use that opportunity to heal and expand and evolve. So that's our conversation for today. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to start the day with you and with everybody else who's joining us. So we're talking about if it's coming up to heal. And I see this every day that I work with clients where there's an upset. And when that upset arises, it's an opportunity for us to maybe complete something, to dissolve an old pattern, to dissolve old hurts, for example. So I, not that long ago, had an altercation due to lack of communication with someone in my life. And this person got really angry because they and I had different understandings about something, and they did not communicate their upset. They just got really upset. They didn't communicate their desires, and this is something that we get to look at, is that when we don't communicate our desires and we expect somebody else to think about things the same way that we do, and we run this whole story in our head, we can create all kinds of drama and discord that doesn't need to be there at all, that could have been diffused by a very simple, direct communication. So it's interesting to me how we're often more willing to avoid a communication, but create a whole dialogue and drama in our minds and then react as if that's the truth. It's a whole cascade that's part of our human crazy, I think, that we do these things rather than just communicate. But anyway, there was this lack of communication, and it resulted in this person being really angry and with me, and I felt very attacked, and it was a trigger for me from old behaviors that had occurred in the context of this relationship, which were very traumatic for me. So what was beautiful about it is that I got to step back from I'm right, you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong and I'm unworthy, or any of these interpretations that may have come up in the past, and I could recognize what was happening in terms of my internal bent, like based on history, where am I going to go with this? And I got to see that there were parts of me that felt that I hold over from feeling made wrong and feeling wrong and bad for simply being who I am. And I saw that dynamic. Rather than being sucked into it, I saw that was an inclination, that historically that's what had happened, is that I would take on the guilt and shame of being wrong when actually I wasn't wrong. There was a miscommunication. It wasn't a matter of right or wrong. And so this was a great opportunity. I'm using this because it was a big trigger for me. And I imagine we've all had times when we get triggered, and then it's a matter of what do we choose to do with that trigger. And in this particular case, I was able to recognize it as an opportunity, to heal these old wounds of guilt and shame and blame and failure and all those power dynamics too that were part of that. And so it gave me an opportunity to do a bunch of work on myself to shift this pattern. And so oftentimes the things that show up in our lives that are triggering and painful and incite all kinds of extreme emotions are opportune. Well, I see them all as opportunities, maybe not right in that moment. You might need to get a little distance from it to be able to address it, but we can often see the wound. That what happens with these situations is they are unearthing our wounds. Now, on the path of growth and development, what we're looking for is sovereignty. What we're looking for is taking accountability and responsibility for the quality of our lives. Good morning, good afternoon, and evening, Gia. Welcome, welcome. So good to have you back with us again. We're talking about it, the opportunity that's presented when we get triggered. When something comes up, when there's strong emotion, or maybe even just that kind of feeling. All of these things are an opportunity for us to heal. And we can receive these situations and these circumstances, as painful as they may be, as an invitation and a request from our higher intelligence, our higher wisdom, to say, hey, you're ready to work on this now, and that's why it's coming up. You're capable of working on this now, and that's why it's coming up. And yesterday we were talking about grief or grieving, or the walls actually that we erect to protect ourselves from the influences of a world that feels beyond our control, or that's overwhelming. And the example that I used was talking about someone who was going through, who was experiencing grief, and it came up, the grief arose in order for us to then be able to address it. Now, it hadn't shown its face for an extended period of time in our work, but then it showed up. And when it shows up, it's an invitation. And I think that if we can experience the roller coasters of our lives as invitations for growth and development, then there's incredible there's an incredible opportunity, but also it shifts the quality of our experience, because we don't feel victimized. Maybe somebody is doing something that is perhaps where you are being victimized. However, even when we're being victimized, we don't need to experience being a victim. And if we are experiencing being victimized, that's also something that we have an opportunity to heal. Now, why would we want to heal that? Because when we are experiencing being victims, we're not in our strength, we're not in our power, we're not in ownership of our own lives. Just because someone is treating you badly doesn't mean you have to be a victim, that you have to step into the role of victim. And so in this particular situation, I got to see the opportunity that it presented for me was that I got to see where I had colluded with this kind of behavior in the past by taking on the guilt and the shame that was foisted on me by somebody else that was seeing me as a villain or seeing me as having done wrong, when in fact that isn't what happened. It was a misunderstanding. It was a misinterpretation of my intentions. It was kind of thinking the worst of me rather than the best of me, and making a judgment from that vantage point. So I was able to kind of gather myself into wholeness in the process of addressing this head on and healing it. And I'm wondering for yourself, have you found yourself in a situation where you get deeply emotionally triggered? And if so, I imagine we all have. Rather than pointing the finger at the other person, because yes, there is that too. There is that too. I'm not minimizing that someone else's behavior can be horrible and dangerous and violent and unacceptable. And we, even with all of that, we have choice in how we interact with all of that. And whether we, as in my case, sort of collude or comply with the worldview that's being imposed, or with the abuse that's being leveled, or we don't. And whatever the spectrum is in those responses. So I remember there was something else that happened, and I got so angry. And what I realized was I was angry out of all proportion. I was just consumed by anger. And so that to me was a big red flag to say, hey, I know you're looking over there and you're saying you're angry because of that person and what they did, but what's going on over here that this is all out of proportion? What's going on over here that I can heal so that I'm not at the effect of these kinds of circumstances going forward? What if these circumstances, what if the circumstances of life unfold to present us with these opportunities for gifts, opportunities for growth? I'm wondering, can you think of a situation in your own life where you had some kind of reaction, where you fell into perhaps a really familiar negative pattern, perhaps a really familiar pattern of negative self-talk or self-judgment, self-incrimination, pain, sorrow, rage, guilt, shame, depression? If you can allow yourself to step back from that, to observe it, to see the bigger picture of what's going on, to allow yourself to be curious rather than judgmental, to be compassionate rather than judgmental, then you have the ability, perhaps, to let that wound dissolve and dissipate. So when we recognize these dynamics, it's like, oh, what's the conversation that I'm having? Maybe the top level of the conversation is all about them and the injustice that is being wrought, for example. Then we get to look at, well, what's going on with me around injustice? What's going on with me that I lose myself when this kind of issue surfaces? It's not to say that there isn't an injustice. It's really important to recognize, like people will say, well, it's kind of blaming the victim if someone is suffering, or if we're creating our world, that, oh, it's my fault that I created that in the universe. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is we're co-creating this universe, okay? And we may be our higher selves, our higher intelligence, whatever it is, the will for our own evolution, may be creating these opportunities for us, not as punishment. It's not punishment. It's an opportunity to recognize a wound, for example, and find a way to heal that. And a wonderful question to ask in the process of this is, what would love do? What would love do? So in this, Gia says, I'm loving the conversation, Mira Rubin. It's like getting into guilt-free healing process. Yes. Thank you for that insight, Gia. Exactly. So what happens is we create guilt and shame and judgment, and oftentimes we're beating ourselves up for being beaten up. How crazy is that, right? Why would you kick somebody who's down, right? And that's what we tend to do for ourselves. Maybe I'm feeling vulnerable or weak or sad, and then I beat myself up for that. It's not about that. It's about, let's use this as an opportunity. Let's address this with curiosity and compassion. And when we address these things with curiosity and compassion, it is guilt-free healing. You know, the guilt is a patterned judgment that we're taught in our cultures in so many ways. You know, if you do something wrong, you're wrong and bad in your being, in your essence, and you should feel bad. That's what we're taught. Good morning, Sue. Welcome. So good to have you joining us this morning. We're talking about if it's coming up to heal. And that all these things that happen in our lives, altercations, upsets, that there's an opportunity within that to make ourselves or to move ourselves into greater wholeness. And again, please be clear, I'm not saying that absolves the other person of their behavior, for example. But so in my situation, I was telling you that this person got really angry. I did a bunch of work on myself, and I did Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono is such powerful magic. It's very simple. It's, I love you. No, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And the idea here is, I'm sorry for whatever my part in this is. As I'm able to experience that other person's vantage point, I could see, you know, this was a miscommunication. So I could see, based on the communication that got communicated through this anger and rage, whatever, I could see that there were valid things to that person's point of view. So I'm sorry. Please forgive me for my role in this. I love you. Thank you. And that's experiencing gratitude. So Gia says, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. It's such a powerful cleansing tool. It can heal you deep, deep emotionally. 100%, Gia. And it's allowing us also to take responsibility. And so I did work on myself. I did Ho'oponopono. And I have to tell you, it was the most bizarre thing. Seriously bizarre. My next encounter with that person, which I had some trepidation about, it was as if nothing had ever happened. It was bizarre. No conversation about it, no acknowledgement of it, no nothing. Jovial, friendly, warm, crazy. So that's kind of the magic of Ho'oponopono. Sue says Ho'oponopono is so helpful. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. Yes, it's super powerful. And the thing is that what activates it to be as powerful as it is not just saying the words, but being present to each of those statements from a place of energetic alignment, from emotion. Sue says, good story. Thanks for sharing. My pleasure. My pleasure. It's just miracle. I remember years and years ago, my dad and I had a fight, and both of us were so stubborn. And neither of us were going to say sorry. It just was not going to happen. And we would have not spoken for who knows how long, because we were both very bullheaded. And what I did, I didn't do Ho'oponopono at that time. I didn't know how. I didn't know it then. But what I did is I just presenced myself to my love for my dad. And I imagined this big love ball, this energetic love ball, just sort of breaking over his head and washing him with love. Another miracle, my father called me up, and all he said is, I love, love, love you. That was all he said. And that was the whole conversation. And that came out of nowhere. That was truly based on any kind of reality that I had lived in. That was a complete miracle. And so we have the power to heal. And we can use Ho'oponopono, for example, on ourselves. Because what we tend to do is we exile ourselves. We judge ourselves. We separate ourselves from ourselves. And what if we can turn that love upon ourselves? I'm sorry. I'm sorry for treating you so terribly, or for not understanding, or for allowing you to feel alone. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. Try that. Try that for yourself. When these emotions come up, when you see yourself act in a way that you don't respect, or that you prefer you didn't. You know, we've all done things that we've not been happy about our behavior. And so if we can use Ho'oponopono with ourselves, and curiosity and compassion, we can use the fact that this, whatever it is coming up, to heal. And we can allow ourselves to engage actively in that healing process. And so life can be a sequence of opportunities for healing, opportunities for alignment, opportunities for expression, opportunities for love and joy. And so that's the invitation for today is, what would love do? You know, turning Ho'oponopono on ourselves, that's an act of love. So that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. Please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it's a tremendous privilege and pleasure to have the opportunity to share the morning musings with you on what it is to be human. So until next time.